Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very happy to be here in South Africa. This is the first time that I get to present what the Global Commission is. I think that there is no need for now to discuss really more about what is coming next, but I just wanted to represent what is the Global Commission, the work we do, and how we can support all the advocacy work that you do on the ground. And so I will guide you through, as you can see, the membership mandate and history, how it was constituted, this Global Commission, the pathways of the commissioners that they suggest for better drug policies, and also what is the evolving thinking and how the commissioners got from where they were in 2011 until now. So next you will see here the list of our commissioners. As you can see, we have 3 African commissioners that are Mr. Kofi Annan, President Obasanjo from Nigeria, and former President Joyce Banda from Malawi. And so this group is, first of all, self-mandated to advocate for better drug policies. This mandate comes from nowhere. It is these people that have gotten together and decided to work on this. We are a very independent body, and the commissioners are who represent the Global Commission, and you will get to see Anand Grover starting tomorrow, our member from India, who is coming here. It is also based on as a moral authority, the most important point and what the Global Commission can do is bring in this bigger picture and with the experience of all these people. We also act as a door opener, a link between the very high-level advocacy and the work on the ground. So basically, all of our work is fed by evidence through research, but also the experiences of people on the ground. We have a very diverse group, so we have people that have done a fantastic job when they were in office, such as our chair now, the former president of Switzerland, Madame Dreyfus, who had put in place the policies of harm reduction policies, the 4-pillar strategy, as it is known, the prevention, harm reduction treatment, and repression policies. We have also other commissioners that have done a terrible job and recognized it later, and I think the former president of Poland, President Kwaśniewski. So where this Global Commission comes from, so you can see here is like some pictures of the group, and the Global Commission started at the beginning by a regional discussion that was the Latin American Commission on Drugs and Democracy. So at the time, the former presidents of Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia got together and started thinking, there is a problem. The drug policies as they are now are representing a danger for democracy. The levels of violence that are engendered by the drug policies, by the drug control policies are so high that there needs to be an understanding of where the problem comes from. So it's not a world drug problem, it's a world drug misconception problem and a world drug policy problem. And so the commissioners of this Latin American Commission, after they had produced their report, that had found that the best practices are in Europe in terms of harm reduction, in terms of reducing the harms. And that's when they reached out to the other members from the other side of the Atlantic and built the Global Commission on Drug Policy. As it has been said many times here, we have now another sister commission, which is the West Africa Commission, that has been set by our member, Mr. Kofi Annan, and that we host now, the West Africa Commission on Drugs. So basically, these commissions, as you can see, the Latin American and the West Africa ones, are commissions made of members from the region that analyze the situation in the region and come up with recommendations that are very specific to the region they are discussing. So basically, the commissioners do engage in all the processes. We do basically advocacy at the national level and at the international level at a very high level with the heads of states, heads of governments, and other ministers. We have 5 pathways that I wanted to present to you and that are going to link to all the discussions that you have heard during these 2 days already. So the first pathway for the Global Commission is to put people's health first. This to us is the first thing. When countries or international organizations think about the design or the implementation of their drug policy, they should think about protecting health first. To us, that comes through harm reduction. Because of the current policies, there is a need to reduce the harms that they produce. So when we speak about it, we talk about interventions such as needle and syringe programs, such as safe injection facilities, and such as drug testing, etc. We do not consider OST as harm reduction. We consider OST as treatment. always, be it methadone or buprenorphine, they're part of the essential medicines list of WHO. Countries have to provide them to people that need them. This is not a choice. This is part of the constitution of WHO. This is part of the right to health. So we address it in that way, and we talk about health first in the current environment, let's say. We have produced many, many reports on this discussion that touches upon the right to health that you can see down there. The second element, which I haven't seen much in the discussion here the last few days, and which is important mostly to Africa other than any other continent in the world, is the access to essential medicines. There are 12 medicines that are on the list of controlled drugs that are in the list of essential medicines, but they're also scheduled as drugs. Basically, what happens is that the world demonizes drugs, demonizes medicines as drugs, and people do not get access to them, be it for pain relief, be it for anesthesia, etc. We also now are facing the issue of, again, people who use drugs, living, for instance, with HIV, don't get access to ARVs. And these are realities. And the Global Commission believes that it is necessary to address this problem of access to essential medicines. Obviously, there was a great progress at the UNGAS, as Jamie just said about it. Again, here on the third pathway is ending the criminalization of people who use drugs. So the Global Commissioners are very clear on this. People who use drugs or possess drugs or material to consume their drugs should not face any civil, administrative, or criminal offenses. Nothing. Because they do not harm anyone else. So, and the next step is that the fourth pathway is that the commissioners have looked into what is the organized crime and what is the response in the black market. How do you address the black market? What we came up with and what we found in any evidence is that there is no understanding of the black market as it works today. There is no global understanding of it. It's so diverse, the role of different players. And what is most important to us is to protect those people that are the low-level players in the market, the dealers, the couriers, the cultivators, the traditional cultivators. They pay the highest price today in the war on drugs, but they play a very small role. Just thinking of the couriers, some of them, so many women don't even know what the quantities that they're carrying in their bodies, be it in the borders of Myanmar, be it in the borders of Central America, and they don't even know what are the punishments or penalties they would face. But they still do it because of economic deprivation. They don't have any other choice. So the commissioners believe that these people need to go to find alternatives to imprisonment instead of paying the high price, while the big, I hate this word, but drug lords are not paying the price. And finally, the fifth pathway, which is the final solutions for the commissioners, is the legal regulation of drugs. This has been, when it was said in 2014, this has brought up about some controversy because people said, oh, the Global Commission wants to legalize everything. The Global Commission does want to legalize everything, but it wants to regulate it, and it wants the state to regulate it. It wants the state to take its responsibility and regulate these dangerous products as substances as it regulates any other dangerous good. I mean, we are based in Geneva, near the European Union, and the heart of the European Union, although it's not, Switzerland is not in the EU. And the EU does regulate everything, every other product that gets into the continent and uses the benefits. It's again about the balance of the benefits versus the harms. Again, this depends on many, many different models. So, for instance, we talk a lot about cannabis, but cannabis is the easiest substance to discuss. It is also needed because it's the one that is mostly used all over the place, but it's also the easiest. Today we're working now on different questions because we know that this is not easy, and we are going to be coming up with a report next year on regulation specifically, but we're asking hard questions. How can countries, developing countries or countries with weak institutions, legalize or regulate? How could countries, what would be their position versus the international conventions, for instance? How do you explain regulation to the general public? So all these questions that are there, but the commissioners are convinced that the countries need to take control. And it is very funny because this report called it Taken Control, at first it was called Retaken Control. And one of our commissioners, the former president of Mexico, said that when did the governments have control of drugs? Never. So they need to take it first. So you would think, what do we do with all of this? So basically, we do very high-level advocacy. We meet with, as I said, heads of states. We meet with different UN agencies' heads. We do discussions at the International Geneva. Here I put a picture from the visit that we had in Mauritius last year. And we were also in Pretoria last year, where as Harry said it in the opening, where we had a meeting with the Minister of Social Development and the Minister of Health, among others. So basically, this work is being shared at the very high level and saying why there is a need for reform. And it's not about health, it is about the social justice agenda. It is about an overview of the whole policies of why this specific drug policy does influence all of the economic, social, and cultural policies of the state, because drugs are at the heart of all this discussion. I wanted to show you this slide because obviously they have moved and they have evolved. This group of commissioners are very diverse. They have very different approaches, very different cultural backgrounds. And at the beginning in 2011, it was really just about opening the debate, just to say something is wrong. Because at the time, no one was questioning the policies in place. I mean, a lot of people were, but not at that level, and it was not heard at that level. So when they came up, they would have never thought that it would evolve so fast in just 5 years. They had never expected it to go this far. And just for example, on the decriminalization on which we focused last year, in 2011, the commissioners themselves thought that the people who use drugs that are arrested need to have, not to go to prison, but need to have some sort of punishment, be it fines or community service. Their thinking evolved because of the evidence and because of all the work they have done throughout the year to find out that that was the big problem, that criminalization is the core issue. It is the face of prohibition to some extent. And finally, for us next, I think Jamie gave the next steps on a very practical level, and I wanted to talk about 2 points for us that are very important in the future. So the first one is really to address a drug-free world. That is not going to happen. It is never going to happen. This slide comes from our report in 2011. I mean, it's even worse now into the latest World Drug Report. I mean, the demand has not diminished. The use prevalence has grown since in the last 10 years. So this is not going to be achieved. And I think that as long as people do not agree and as there's no consensus and agreement that a drug-free world is not possible, this issue is going to remain. The second point, and this is a difficult point for us in the outcome document of UNGAS, is to say that the conventions are the cornerstone of drug policy. I mean, this word is very strong. When you have a foundation and a basis of a system that it does not work, your house is going to crumble. And do not address it. To us, it's a nonsense. And to these people, to the commissioners that are policy specialists and that have spent all of their lives in politics and in policy making, they do not understand that a public policy cannot evolve. Public policies evolve with the situation of the country. They evolve with the social environment. They evolve societies evolve, needs evolve. But staying with the same letters that have been written and articles that have been written in the 1960s and 70s and 80s that are no longer adapted here represents a big issue to the Global Commission. Thank you very much.